Seeing none, we will move along to the superintendent. No, student. Nikki, you're here.
Yes, I'm
Give
here.
us a student
And
report.
this is her last meeting?
My
Yes, and
last
so we have to
meeting.
make sure.
Yes.
Nikki, please.
Okay. At Wilkshire, Mrs. Flagg is going to be the teaching consultant for the early childhood special ed program in the new edition. They had a successful kindergarten roundup, and kindergarten classes went to the MSU Gardens to see the butterfly gardens. At Murphy, the carnival was a huge success. That was Friday, April 29th, 2005. And the upcoming field trips. Second grade is going to the IMAX. Third grade is going to the Huckleberry Railroad, which is at Crossroads Village in Flint. And the fourth grade is going to Mackinac Island. And fifth grade is going to Greenfield Village. Murphy is also continuing the mileage club during the lunch recesses. And the Michigan Mileage Club will culminate with the Michigan Mile at Oldsmobile Park on Saturday, June 4th. And thank you to Joanne McFadden for coordinating this. At Ralia, the fourth graders are at encampment week this week at Lake Lansing Park North, and they're learning about the Voyagers. I visited them this Monday. It was awesome. And May 17th, the fourth graders are going to the Mackinac Island, as well as Murphy. And the safety picnic for the kids who, safety, is May 18th, or was at Francis Park. Field day with Murphy is coming up, and fourth grade is on the 20th, third grade is on the 24th, second grade is on the 26th, and fifth grade is June 1st. At Meridian High School, they're graduating 35 students with regular diplomas and 15 with GEDs. At the high school, prom is this Saturday from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. and post-prom is from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. at the high school. And baccalaureate is June 4th, the day before the graduation ceremony. Commencement is June 5th at 1 p.m. And tomorrow is a huge track meet against Williamston at Williamston High School at 4:30. So, thank you.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks, Nikki. Did you say this was Nikki's last
Last?
meeting?
So.
For two, and you've been our representative for 2 years?
Yes.
Well, Nikki, I didn't realize this was going to be your last meeting. I would have made it a little more memorable and special for you.
That's okay.
Well, we were gonna hold her diploma hostage, because it's here on the table
Yes,
here.
it's still sitting here. But I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and out of your life to represent the students of Hazlet as a representative to the board, and we appreciate the work that you've done and being here and getting to know you.
Thank
So
you.
thank you, Nikki.
It's been a pleasure working with you too. So,
Yeah.
take care.
Thanks,
That's
Nikki.
great.
Thank you.
And now, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thanks, Michael. I'd like to congratulate Chris Cody. There's Chris out in the audience tonight. And Mrs. Lori Barbieri on the recent election, the board election this past week. They both began serving their 4-year term in July, so congratulations to both of you. I'm also pleased to announce that we have Andrew Rumsey here this evening, and Mr. Baldy Galitas is going to introduce you to her.
Good evening, thank you. And as you know, we had an associate principal's position open, and we posted that, and we went internally with it. We had 4 outstanding candidates, which speaks volumes for our staff in here, and that's why we're as good as we are. And I'm very happy to announce that Andrea Rumsey is our new associate principal. She's taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade here at the middle school, most recently 7th grade social studies. And she's been in leadership capacities throughout the year. She's been involved with our school improvement team, even our bond issue committees, DCAT, our latest curriculum issue teams, as well as our HCC, which is of course the district-wide school improvement team. So we're very excited, and I know she is too, and the staff's very supportive that Andrea is our new associate principal. Congratulations.
Thanks. I am very excited. Looking forward to working in Hazlet in a kind of different capacity. I've enjoyed my time teaching, but I'm excited to start next year out as an administrator and look at the big picture instead of just what's going on in my classroom. So thank you for the opportunity.
Congratulations.
Thanks, we're happy to have you.
And then this becomes the really busy time of the year for all of us, but just a reminder to the community and the Board of Education about some upcoming events. May 18th, we have our high school spring band concert. May the 26th, our annual Pops concert. May the 31st, senior recognition night. June the 1st, Meridian High School graduation. June the 2nd, our district-wide retirement reception, which will be held at the middle school. And then June the 4th is our baccalaureate at the PAC Center. And then June the 5th, of course, is Hazlet High School graduation that we hold at the Breslin Center at 1 o'clock. And then finally, I want to recognize Bob Hewitt, the teachers, the secretaries, the bus drivers, and all the school volunteers, as well as Gail Hicks for all their good work with our kindergarten roundup this past week. So it was very, very successful, as it's always been in Hazlet, and we had a good turnout. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Moving on to discussion items. Our first discussion item is the resale of bonds. And we have guests with us tonight who, and Steve, are you going to start off?
I'm ready to introduce.
Introduce? Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have three distinguished guests with us here this evening to talk about the upcoming refunding of the 2001 bond. First, we're going to have Brenda Palmer from A.G. Edwards, which is actually the firm that does the underwriting of the bonds. And then I'm going to have Dick Barch from Stoddard Barch. We'll talk a little about the financing, the numbers. He's our financial advisor. And then we'll finish with Jeffrey Souls from Troon's law firm. We'll talk about all the legal documents and the actual resolution that the board will be passing this evening. So I'd like to start out with Brenda Palmer.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Board of Ed and Superintendent. I do have a handout that should be in front of your tables. It looks like this with your logo on the front. I'm just briefly going to highlight a couple items, and then Mr. Barch will conclude the summary of the refinancing. In a nutshell, refinancing of bonds is similar to refinancing your home mortgage. When interest rates are lower than the rates you're currently paying, it's an opportune time to look at refinancing, and that's what we've done here with part of the 2001 bond issue. We've carved out the maturities that produce savings. We don't refund bonds by maturity that do not produce savings, so we look at those on a maturity by maturity basis, which is really important, I think, to note. So the refunder was priced last Thursday, and I think we hit the market at a very opportune time. The next day, new job creations came out, which was 100,000 higher than anticipated, which sent the bond market into a tailspin, to say the least. I think the market closed on Friday about 10 basis points higher than on Thursday when we priced these bonds. It's leveled off a little bit today, but it's all about timing. I think that both Hazlet Schools and your entire financing team picked a good day to be in the market. And we do watch the market on a daily basis when we determine when to go and when the right time is. So I think overall the savings are actually higher than we had originally anticipated, which is always good news to provide to you. A couple bullets I want to just cover. The third bullet down from my handout talks about the refinancing. And the number I think that's most important to you is the number that your taxpayers will experience in savings on this issue, and that's the $528,000. So over $500,000 is saved on this refinancing, and that's just with the pure refunding of the bonds and the refinancing. The savings that's passed on to your taxpayers over the next 17 years will range from $20,000 to $38,000. So it's a nice level savings every year. The closing date, which is the next bullet, is dated delivery date. That's actually the closing. That's when the closing takes place, and that escrow account is set up to fund that refunding. I think an important note to make is under bond ratings. This district should, I think, be very proud of itself with its finances and the order in which they maintain them. Its underlying ratings from both Moody and S&P are in the A category, and that's outstanding for a school district given the current state of the economy and the way the state funds schools. We've seen a lot of districts that have fallen below the A range. This helps sell your bonds. Your investors do look very carefully at underlying ratings. It's obviously we sold the bonds insured, which gives us the AAA rating, but investors do pay very close attention to the underlying rating and they believe are the risks involved. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Barch, and then we can answer any questions you might have.
Brenda with A.G. Edwards is here to make an offer to purchase your bonds, and I'm here to either recommend to do it or to recommend against it. And of course, we're going to recommend that you accept her offer. Why? I'll kind of cover it to you. I think everyone has this white, blue, red, green sheet. I'll tell you why I'm recommending to accept the offer of A.G. Edwards. The bonds that we're refunding are the 2001s. They had an interest rate of 5.35%. Brenda's offer is to accept to refund the bonds at 4.29%. So if you accept this offer, you'll be dropping the interest rate by 1.06%. So you'll be taking the interest rate down over one full percentage point. What does that do for us? Well, it saves us $528,542. So it's going to save us $500,000. And then if we save that, we'll save an additional $218,000 from the school bond loan fund. So when you combine both of those numbers, we're saving $746,000. When we do a refunding, we, as a rule of thumb, like to have 3% savings. This has a savings of 3.24%, so it's at that level, and then just quarter of a percent above that. Turn to the second page, and I'll kind of show you where is this 528,000. In that first block, you'll see in the third column, that's the annual savings, and at the bottom you'll see 528,542, which is the number I just used. So if you do this, you'll be taking the debt service down by those numbers. And this, I have to make clear to you, is cost avoidance. We're not going to get a check for $528,000. This is, we're saving on our bills, okay? So go over to the third column, or the third box, the third column, and it says savings again. Again, this is cost avoidance, but that is, if you go down that list, you'll see that's what I'm projecting that you'll be saving from the school bond loan fund, and that gives us that $218,000. And in the last column, you'll see that combined is the figure $746,000. That's kind of the combined savings from both the reduced debt service payments and the school bond loan fund savings. Back to the second box where it says estimated millage, you'll see you'll still be levying the 8.33 mills, but on the third page, in this box, you'll see that your average growth rate over the past 6 years has averaged 7.64%. If you follow that 7.64% down, you'll see I use 7.64% for 5 years, and then I've got your growth going to 3%, so I've really taken a very conservative view of it. But if your growth were to continue at the 7.64 or any number greater than the 3% I've projected, your estimated millage will come down sooner than I'm showing on this sheet. So you will probably reduce your millage much before I'm showing on this sheet, but the accepted method of doing it is to use 5 years average plus then 3% is kind of accepted at the state. And it's hard to project your valuation. My savings numbers are exact, they're true, there's no question about them. The millage rate, I guess you could argue with me because I don't know what your valuations are going to be out into the future. But this is and I should add too, on this last page, this is kind of your total debt picture of what's out there on this bond, other bond issues, what I'm projecting as the amount that you're going to be borrowing annually from the school bond loan fund. Your total debt picture is sort of represented on this page. It's pretty exact as far as the debt. It's a little bit on the millage rate. We're estimating what your valuations are going to be. But this is a very good, strong financing. We're hitting the market at the right time. Interest rates, as you know, are headed up. I strongly recommend that you accept this proposal. It's very good. It's a good financing that AG Edwards is offering to you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now or afterwards. No questions, Mr. Silver?
Good evening. I'm Jeff Souls with Troon Law Firm. I've got the black booklet in front of you. There are 3 documents in there. I'm going to briefly describe 2 of them, and then the resolution I'll summarize paragraph by paragraph because you haven't had a chance to review that as yet. It was just prepared this afternoon. On the left-hand side behind the resolution is the bond purchase agreement. This document is what's being presented by AG Edwards for the purchase of your bonds. And the basic buy-sell terms are repeated in the resolution, so I won't get into that. But what this document would do, if the board approves the resolution, it authorizes signing this document tonight, and this document would become a live contract between the school district and AG Edwards, binding the school district to issue and deliver the refunding bonds on May 26th, and binding AG Edwards to take them up and pay for them. So it's a buy-sell agreement for your bonds. And it just gets everything lined up for the closing. There's a lot of documents that need to be signed. Further documents need to be prepared. The state needs to review for school bond loan fund qualification. That takes at least 15 days. A lot of things need to be done. This keeps everybody on track. So it's an agreement that would bind from tonight until close. And then on the right-hand side is the escrow agreement. Because this is a refinancing, this is the real operative document. The funds on May 26th would be deposited pursuant to this escrow agreement, be invested in direct U.S. government securities that are designed to produce a revenue stream that will pay off the old bonds being refunded on their first call date. So what it does is it takes the refunded bonds, the portion of the 2001 bonds that are being paid off here, and sets up this escrow that takes care of that debt service. It takes it off of your books, and then you're replacing it with the 2005 refunding bonds at the lower interest rates. That's the savings to the taxpayers. Now, they won't see it right away because you're in the school bond loan fund, but as Dick Bart showed, the projection is you would get out of the school bond loan fund earlier because your debt service is lower and your borrowing from the school bond loan fund is lower as well. So this is the real operative document. Unlike 2001 when you did the bond issue, the operative document there was an architect agreement, a construction contract, because you were doing bricks and mortar. Here you're doing a refinancing, and the escrow agreement operates from the day of close until the bonds are paid off in about 2010. Okay, now the resolution, I'd like to summarize paragraph by paragraph. For that, I need to put my eyes on. Paragraph number 1 has the buy-sell terms repeated from the bond purchase agreement. The principal amount of the bonds that you're looking at issuing is $11,840,000. The purchase price is $12,395,000. That's the par value of the bonds less an underwriter's discount AG Edwards fee of $62,000 plus original issue premium. A good portion of the bonds were sold at higher than their face value of $691,000. And then some original issue discount. Some of the maturities were sold at less than their face value of $73,000. That gets us at the $12,395,000. Paragraph 2 has these bonds dated their date of delivery, May 26th. And then they're going to mature serially 2006 through 2020, and then a single small term bond in 2022. The first interest payment on these bonds would be November 1st. That's the next interest payment date on any of your bonds. Paragraph 3 has these bonds being able to be called May 1st, 2015. It's a 10-year call protection, pretty standard in the industry. Your 2001 bonds had the same call protection, 10 years. The difference with these bonds is these bonds are advance refunding your 2001 bonds, so you're stuck with these bonds for 10 years. When you issued the bonds in 2001, we're 4 years later, interest rates have gone down, we're doing a refinancing. This is a one-shot thing that the federal government allows you to do. So even if interest rates dropped 3 years from now, you're stuck with these interest rates on these bonds. However, there's a portion of your 2001 issue still outstanding that didn't make sense to refund, so you could get some additional savings by refinancing those if rates did drop in the future. The other caveat is, 8, 9 months ago, we were at 40-year lows on interest rates, so you're pretty much at the bottom of the barrel, historically speaking. Paragraph 4 details how you would pay off that single term bond in the 2 installments shown. Paragraph 5 details how you would give notice of redemption in the event you called bonds early, either pursuant to paragraphs 3 or 4. Paragraph 6 authorizes blank bonds to be prepared for transfer of ownership. Paragraph 7 appoints the Bank of New York as the escrow agent to operate under the escrow agreement. Paragraph 8 details how the funds would be expended. About $86,000 of the bond proceeds would be used for cost of issuance. That's our fee as council, Stoddard Barch's fee, the cost for printing this preliminary official statement, and the final official statement, its distribution, rating agency fees, school bond loan fund qualification fees. All those costs are built into that number, and the savings that were recited earlier are net of all those costs, savings to the taxpayers. Then $12,288,000 goes into the escrow to fully fund the escrow. And finally, $21,500 is the cost for the insurance from MBIA Insurance Corporation. Brenda mentioned the insurance. The insurance on the bonds gives your bonds a AAA rating, the highest rating that they can get. And A.G. Edwards will certify that the cost of that insurance at $21,000 is less, typically much less, than the cost that you would have had to pay in higher interest rates had you not insured it. And the IRS also requires that that certification be there to take it into account for determining the yield on the bonds. Paragraph 9 authorizes the President and Secretary to sign the original bonds for delivery. Paragraph 10 approves this preliminary official statement and its use by A.G. Edwards in getting the rates that are being presented here today. They got the rates last week. Paragraph 11 approves a final official statement to be prepared. Bondholders would look at that document in the future in the event that your bonds trade in the secondary market. They need to determine whether it's a good investment, so they would look at that booklet in the future. And you're required under continuing disclosure obligations on your prior issues and this issue as well to provide updates of your audit and operating and financial information every year so that bondholders in the future would know if it's a good deal, even if it's 3-5 years from now. Paragraphs 12 and 13 authorize signing whatever documents are necessary to close the transaction. Paragraph 14 approves the final qualification application. It's attached as an exhibit for this resolution. That's for the school bond loan fund qualification of your bonds. Paragraph 15 authorizes the purchase of the bond insurance and the execution and delivery of the commitment for that insurance. Paragraph 16 appoints Bank of New York as the paying agent on the new bonds. And paragraph 17 is the repealer to make sure this resolution stands on its own. Any questions? I know it's a lot. Yes, sir.
Well, I guess my question may be of Brenda. I need to reconcile a couple of numbers that I don't think I have yet. I really do understand how we get from the original bond amount, $11,475,000 to $11,840,000. But in this document, there are a couple of other numbers, and I think maybe I get $12,395,955. The sale price of the bonds last Thursday. What's that?
It's the par amount of the bonds, the $11,840,000, minus the original issue discount of the $73,000, because some bonds were sold below the face value, plus the original issue premium, which is $691,000. Those are laid out in that paragraph.
Yep.
Less the underwriter's discount.
Can you
Which is our
explain
fee
that to
for
me in
selling the
layman's terms,
bonds.
though?
The underwriter's discount?
Well,
That's-
I mean, yes.
Yeah, that's our fee to sell the bonds. Most of that fee gets paid to our brokers. When they sell a bond, they get a broker commission. And then we have costs associated with a bond sale. For instance, filing with the QSIP Bureau, getting QSIP numbers to file these with the SEC. We have a variety of fees associated with a bond sale.
So let me say this. I thought that's how we got from 11.4 to 11.8, was a variety of fees. No, there's a lot of components that go into that. Kind of in a nutshell, if you think about the escrow and how the escrow has to be funded, we're refunding
less bonds in the new par amount, and that sounds like what the issue is, by about 400,000. Actually, when we close on this issue, the proceeds, the net proceeds are gonna go into that escrow account. That's what Bank of New York is gonna hold for you until the call date. The call date on this issue, because it is advance refunding, isn't until November 1 of 2011. So for 6 years, that money's gonna sit there earning interest. But all those bonds that have been like carved out of your debt, they're sitting in escrow now. That escrow agent has to make interest payments every 6 months on the higher rate. So your higher rate,
And I would add, because it's an advance refunder, our yield on our bonds is a full percentage point below it, and you can't invest in that escrow greater than our yield. So you've
Right.
gotta put more money in to make up that difference. You're using an escrow to pay 1 percentage point higher
Right.
at
Right.
a limited investment rate.
Right.
So it takes more dollars going in the front door to take care of that over the 6 years.
I got that.
yeah. So if you just try to think about it in terms of the numbers, for the 11,400,000 that sits in that escrow account, the interest on that is 813,000 over the 6-year period. So you see, you have a gap there to start. The premium has offset that gap by quite a bit, the net premium generated by the sale of the bonds. But there's still that, 400,000 that was the shortfall, and that's why there's more bonds issued than what was refunded. And that's fairly typical in an advance refunding, because that money has to set in an escrow and invest in government securities, which are lower interest rates than maybe other investments in the market, but certainly lower than what you're currently paying on those bonds.
I don't wanna really pull this onion completely apart.
Yeah, no,
But
okay.
that timing difference in interest, as explained in our finance committee, I still understand to be a part of the difference between 11.4 and 11.8. So I'm having a hard time getting to 12.
If the bonds were sold at a premium overall, which means that the bondholders paid a higher
And
amount.
they were, so that's not hypothetical.
No, that's not hypothetical. What's being presented here is a premium bond sale, where the buyers are paying higher than the face amount to buy a higher interest rate than what the market would normally give. If these were sold straight at par, you'd be issuing 12,300,000 worth of bonds to refund 11.4.
Because that's how
Because
much
you
is
need that much
needed.
dollars
Yeah.
for the
So,
escrow.
I guess I'm trying, I don't wanna lead you to this answer, but it'd be helpful if you told me that 11.8 is our exposure, and it happens to be the 12.3
288,
Yeah.
right.
is the market value at the moment.
Well, that's the overall
That's the-
cost, that's the cost of the escrow.
And it is, I think in layman's terms, it is the market value at the moment, because it's what the buyers of your bonds are willing to pay for 11,800,000 at the little bit higher interest rates. They're buying interest rate.
We haven't loaded some more bricks on top of the taxpayers and are asking them to
No,
pay.
there's-
That's, I
This
guess,
is about savings to your
Right.
taxpayers.
No, I
and there
get that,
truly is
but-
savings.
yeah. But at some point, you add on enough cost that
Right.
savings begin to go away. And I
Yeah.
guess I just wanna, I think, for my comfort level, be assured that we haven't done that, any more than we know we've
That's a
done.
very valid question. We get this pretty often with bond sales, especially advance refunders, because a lot of times the new bonds being issued are higher than what's being refunded
Right.
because of this escrow piece. But when we talk about the savings levels, the savings I talked about, and the savings that Mr. Barch mentioned with the school bond loan fund, that's net of all of the costs. So we're not, deducting costs now from the numbers that we presented to you. That's already net, taking into account
Right.
any costs associated. So those are true savings to your taxpayers.
That's tough to reconcile, though, I think,
It is.
from my standpoint, from what we heard earlier, when we said it was 11.84, and suddenly we've got another 55, or what, 550,000 or thereabouts, tacked on again, and saying, are we still saving all of this money, since we've now increased the price here up by another 500,000? I mean, we said we were gonna
truly are
save
saving
750,000, but somebody,
Yeah, it's hard to reconcile.
it's hard to figure out where that 500,000, who's paying that 500,000?
If I could repeat what I said to Mr. Lowe, If we didn't sell these at a net premium of 550,000,
Right.
we would be coming to the board tonight with an issue size of 12,300,000
Right.
to refund that 11.4.
Yeah, that would have been a lot
That
easier
would
to
be hard
explain
to
and understand.
But the savings would be identical,
Right.
because the interest rates on that 12,300,000 would be a little bit lower.
But see, we had a meeting before, and we were looking at 11.84. And that's still what I'm looking at.
Right.
And then we get the contract or the resolution, and it's got 12,395, and all of a sudden, the flag went up
Sure.
and said, well, wait a minute, where'd this other 500,000 come from?
The-
But you're saying it was here on this one too, it just doesn't,
That's why we
It's,
get.
it's there reflected in the interest rates, because they're paying that $550 premium to buy a little bit higher interest rates.
okay. Somebody's paying us, that ain't.
This is a good market to be in because it is a premium market and people are willing to pay that premium, which is beneficial to you to generate that premium, so you issue less debt.
Can I play Monday morning quarterback for just a second? Because I heard one thing that you said in your speech about 4 months ago, that it was at its 40-year low, I think is what Mr. Soul said. Is that to be interpreted that if we were sitting here 4 months ago and doing this exact same thing, the 740-some thousand would be even higher because it was at its absolute low?
Not necessarily.
That's
Matter of
not
fact, I would
okay,
say no.
that's-
There's a complicating factor.
Yeah.
Because the escrow, the securities you're putting into this escrow 4 months ago were much lower interest rates. What happens is the interest rates that you pay on your bonds 4 months ago may have been down here, and today they're up a little bit, because they've gone up in 4 months.
Right.
But the securities investment rate 4 months ago was way down here, so you had a disparity of like this much. The interest rates in the bonds have come up a little, but the interest rate in the investments have come up a lot, making that escrow more efficient.
So it's offsetting of sorts?
Right. We've
Well,
been
it's-
able to avoid something called negative arbitrage, which was hurting the deal
I
4
bet.
months ago.
I knew we'd
That's why it
ask enough
didn't work.
questions so somebody would use that word.
You'd like to hear, this.
Finally got to that
Yeah.
word.
Steve has the
Yeah, that
final
was in
numbers,
here.
and I have them with me if you'd like to see them. We've virtually had to suppress the escrow yield in the investments of the escrow because we hit the no negative arbitrage number. So this is like a perfect escrow. Because short-term interest rates have come up faster than long-term rates. So we have this, difference in the market that is working very nicely for refunders. Some people referred to it about a month ago as a perfect storm, and it's still sort of percolating out there, but not for much longer. We all, follow the feds as they meet regularly, and they just met again last week and raised that short-term rate. And that's only the overnight rate, but it does trickle down into the short end of the yield curve. So that's why we've seen, short maturities, 1-2 year maturities, kind of moving up a little bit faster than the long end, making deals like this work.
Have to take your word for that one.
So the reality is that our timing is very good.
It really is really good, yeah. This deal didn't work, as recently as 3 weeks ago. And then it worked, it wouldn't have worked on Friday, but we priced this deal on Thursday.
And just for clarification, just in case, the net savings is solid.
Yes.
500
Absolutely,
and something is
yes.
solid. And the costs are already taken into
Right, the
account for that.
528 that I presented is an absolute number. The number Dick presented could be higher depending on your future
Right.
property growth and
Correct.
how much you have to borrow from the school bond loan fund.
The 218 number that was projected, is that
Right,
what you're saying?
so it could only go higher. Right, so.
Any other questions?
If not, when we get to the point, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Always fun.
Well, do you want to comment or?
I guess I feel like, Steve, I don't know if you had intended sort of Tobias's issue to be put squarely on the table, and that we really say that, and that is that he had concern, maybe too strong a word. You may want to say it better than I.
Well, if I might just say, first of all, did you get your question answered on the 12.4, or the 12.4 million? Because when we're actually only issuing 11.8.
Right.
That we're obligated to pay, we're getting more because of that, and that's helping the escrow earnings to supplement. But we're actually, if you look at the 11.8 versus 11.4, which we talked about earlier, that's what we're making up. That's why we're having to issue more, is because of those costs and the additional interest that we have, or additional money that we have to put in there to pay the higher rates of bonds.
I guess where I was headed was, which side of 11.8 are the fees on? Are they between 11.8 and 12, or are they between 11.4 and 11.8?
The 11,475 is what we currently have to, is our current debt.
Right.
We're issuing 11.8, so the fees are the difference between the 11.8 and 11.4, part of that, 168,000
Right.
roughly in total fees.
Right.
The additional 200,000 is the additional money that we have to put in escrow to make up in paying those higher interest costs during that escrow period.
Right.
Am I explaining that correctly? So, is that,
Yes.
does that answer your
Yes.
question?
The 12,395 is something to do with par value.
That's not
Whatever
your
that is.
discount of the
Okay.
62,000.
Is the board comfortable, or are there any other questions?
I am comfortable, and since I raised the questions, maybe I'll at least say that, you know, I think, I was doing a little bit of what I think Tobias is doing, that is to shine some light on this, so we don't just quickly go past. We're letting bonds for more than we currently owe. But the combination of fees that take it up and getting a better deal on timing that takes it down gives us a net gain. And I think, you know, just a little light on that was all I was trying to accomplish.
Good.
And I think that's what Tobias wanted to do as well.
But the overriding factor of this is what we're being told, and we've certainly been told this before, because we've refunded before over the years, is that we're being told that 518, or whatever the number is solid, 528, and 218 is also relatively solid, only can go higher. So we're at almost $750,000 guaranteed. And so, I mean, it really becomes, I mean,
Pretty easy.
we've trusted them all before, and we're just gonna continue to trust them, we hope, and
Right.
they haven't gone wrong yet. So therefore, it really is sort of a no-brainer. I mean, but to understand that we're saving us and the payments in the district $750,000, and so, yeah, I mean, the no vote here would have to be really tough to explain, so, I mean, we've done it before, and obviously we should, the committee met and intends to recommend this, to do it again.
Let's move on to the next discussion item. Bob Oliver is here to talk to us.
He wanted a roll call
Are we
vote.
gonna do it right now?
You do the resolution?
We wanna do the resolution right this second? Well, then let's do it.
I think we should.
Do you need
Just
a
one
motion?
second, Bob.
Motion.
I move we take a roll call vote on the
Support.
refinancing of the bonds.
And support? Okay, Cheryl?
Mr. McIntyre?
Yes?
Mr. Thibodeau?
Yes?
Mrs. Levy?
Yes.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes?
Mrs. Belzer?
Yes.
It passes. Okay, Bob. Bob's here to talk to us tonight about the operation of the pool in the last year since it's open, programs and new programs.
I understand that.
I'm trying to do a video presentation. Unfortunately, the projector of the new system doesn't like my video I put into
You
the
gotta jump.
PowerPoint. So I don't know if you want to move or whatever, but we're behind you. Situate yourselves.
Thank you. You have to
I'm
do
guessing
kind
we're
of a
gonna
dance.
make this whole presentation never use the word arbitrage one time.
I'm not sure if I can say it 3 times fast. I'll zip through this pretty quick. This is a pool, basically the first day it opened. You can see we actually have some old red and white lane lines from the old pool. Our old practice lane lines were in there, because the new ones had not arrived yet. This is from the bleacher here. So we opened last summer, and the bond we're talking about refinancing there, about $5 million I think for that. If you haven't been there, it's a gorgeous pool. It's to show you some comparison here, the old pool was 25 yards by 14 yards wide. The new one's essentially twice as big. It's 12 lanes instead of 6. 8 competitive lanes rather than 6. We now have 2 diving boards rather than none. When I took over the program there as the PE instructor and the swim coach, they hadn't had diving in 16 years, I think. So when I started working with the program, we actually run a diving board somewhere. We started a girls' polo season about 3 years ago, a club, and we used PE nets for our water polo nets. We were pretty resourceful. Now we've got a beautiful index system. We didn't have too much deck space there. It wasn't well lit. Now we've got a gorgeous pool with plenty of deck spaces. We now hold big championship meets with no problem whatsoever. Bleacher-wise, we had about 200 seating, I believe, in the old pool. The new one has pretty close to 500. So it's a marvelous pool. When I took over the position as the aquatic director, we kind of looked and said to ourselves, what do we offer in the community? What do they like to do? We have many different facets in the community, different ideas of what should be done with the pool. We started looking at what we can offer. We looked at the existing programs, what went well, so we expand on those, the new programming then. We kind of looked at the cost of the programming, and our goal for most of the programs like Learn to Swim and Diving, we want to stay in the black, cover our costs and those kind of things. And we want to provide good value for our community members. So a little comparison here. We're somewhere in the middle for the most part with some of the area schools and YMCAs and those kind of things for swim lessons, and pretty generous with the lap lessons. Surprisingly, with the teenagers, they think 3 is too much, but you go anywhere else and substantially more. What's not up there is for families, we charge $5 for the first 2 family members and then $1 for each additional. So if you have 3 or 4 kids, you get in there at a pretty decent price, under $10 anyways. So we think that's very good value. The existing programs, we had open swim or lap swim only 3 times a week for the most part in the school years. We did our Learn to Swim lessons were summer only. Our Kids Connection is a program with Gene over for in the summertime only. We introduced a lifeguarding class, was really the only PE class we had in there full time in the water. And as I mentioned, we started girls water polo about 3 years ago. We did a little bit with community ed with kayaking and scuba in the evening. We did very little rentals though with the old pool, it just wasn't very inviting. And the Marlins have been there for about 14 or 15 years. And Joan Barch has been doing the senior aqua size in the mornings during the schools for about 6 or 7 years, I believe. So as we looked and see what people like, we had quite a few people request the early bird swimming in the morning before school. So we do that 5 days a week now, early in the morning. And we got a couple board members that come there. We've been averaging somewhere between 3, 7, 8 people each day. This is one of those programs that don't bring a whole lot of money in because staff, senior citizens, and the like it in for free. But it seems to be pretty popular with the ones who are there. We've got some real regulars there. Again, this is one of these videos here that will not work very well for some reason projector. We thought we really need Learn to Swim lessons during the school year, so we put them on Saturdays morning, and they've been pretty popular. We have 2 sessions, one from 10 to 10:45, one from 11 to 11:45. We've been averaging somewhere around 20, 24 persons each Saturday since last fall. So it's been pretty steady, pretty regular. We also, because we have diving boards, try and promote diving with the little kids, how to dive safe. We added that same time as the swim lessons on Saturday. We've got about somewhere between 4 and 6 kids most Saturdays doing the diving. Both sort of ranges here, mostly the younger ones. When Mike was in his last year over at the high school, we designed and went and made a pool time class, a class for people who like to play in the water but don't want to be a lifeguard. So we call it Pool Time. It was a real popular course. We had about 27 kids take it this past fall. It was the first time we've offered it. We've been fortunate to partner with our community ed people, ZZ Underwater World for the scuba here, which unfortunately can't see, and then Carl Hannock, the whitewater kayak instructor who's there also for community ed, brought in a dozen kayaks, which helps out quite a bit. The foundation actually bought us a couple kayaks, a couple canoes, which we used, but with 26 kids, it was nice of Carl to come in and help teach it and lend us his kayaks for about 2 weeks. So the kids really, really loved it. In fact, I think about 10 of them would like to take it over again. They had that much fun with it. We did a number of other things with them. Something we hadn't done before was some evening aqua size. We tried that a little bit. Did not do as well as we'd hoped, about 4 or 5 most nights. We tried family flick and float. This is the only picture I could find where you can see the big screen there. That's about 15 by 21 foot size screen there. And Those did not do real well, and I've talked to some other aquatic directors and other pool operators, and they say the same thing. People think that'd be a great idea, but they just can't seem to get the numbers out very well for it. So we've set up 2 this summer, and rather than just opening the doors and having 2 or 3 lifeguards there and waiting around for a couple hours to see if anybody shows up, this summer we're gonna do a pre-registration with it. Hopefully we'll get a better idea. People maybe pay up front and they're committed to coming, and then we know we've got them. This year we added boys water polo for the first time ever. Kind of back in the left corner there, you can see part of the net hanging there. They lock right into the deck and hang out over the water. That's Lucas Aricchio, one of our seniors here. We renewed the middle school swimming with Donna Redker. She came in the fall when the weather's kind of nice, and we just now set up 2 weeks to come in the spring again. So she walks them across, they swim for about 35 minutes and then walk back. So that's worked out pretty good for us. And we've set aside some time during the day when the pool wasn't being used for some special needs kids. We've got the middle school, Wilkshire, and East Lansing come on Thursdays. Almost every Thursday they come in with a group somewhere between, depending on which schools are showing up, 6 to 12 kids who use the pool every Thursday. So these are the programs we've actually added over the course of the last 10 months since we've started. We've upped from 3 times to 10 times on the lap swim. We do lessons on Saturday during the school year for both swimming and diving. The new pool class, we did the aerobics, the flick and floats, started the boys club, renewed the middle school PE. The special needs now have some time that they're available to get in there. I just hooked up with Eric Best, who is the MSU diving coach, and they're going to rent our boards to do the Spartan Diving Club there. And so as we get kids that go and graduate through our little diving program, get a little older, then he'll be there. I'll be able to work with him and help promote our diving program as well. Some of the stuff we're looking to do, we want to do a diving open house. The MSU coach for water polo is going to do a free clinic for everybody coming up here in a couple of weeks. Amanda Redker is going to do a community lifeguarding course this upcoming Saturday, Friday and Saturday evening, Saturday and part of Sunday. We look possibly this summer to do a WSI course. We'd like to see a middle school swim team down the road here. We've tentatively set up with a summertime water polo program there to keep promoting that program. We talked to a lot of people. If you're paying $3 a pop to come and you're swimming 4 times a week, the price goes up pretty quick on a yearly basis. So we're looking at maybe coming up with a price that's very good value for our year-round swimmers, make it a little bit more of a good value for them. And we're always open to suggestions that we ask around to see what people would like and what we can put in there. Not surprising, during the school year we don't have that much. We have a few things in the evening because the pool is used quite a bit with school groups, with boys swimming and the water polo, girls swimming and the water polo, those kind of things. But this summer I know we've set up, the pool essentially will be open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday until about 6 o'clock Friday afternoon, no weekends. So it'll be well used this summer. So it's been a jewel for the school and for the community as well, and I'm glad to see it's getting some use there. And we're always looking for new suggestions, so please, if you or your neighbor say something to you, pass it on. We'd like to give it a try. Questions?
Any questions for Bob?
I have one, Bob. You're much too modest. Talk about your swim team and the numbers that you've generated there in the last couple of years.
Last couple of years we've done pretty well. Last year with the old pool even, we had 43 kids that were on the season by the end of the year. We had a number drop off throughout the year. This year we did a little bit better. We had close to 70 that came out, and we ended up with 46 on the team at the end of the year. So it's been a real popular program. The new pool is nice. Last year we were shoehorning them into lanes, trying to get enough kids in there and doing split practices and those kind of things. So with the new pool we have plenty of room to run practices with everybody at the same time.
And your swim team was real successful this year.
We did pretty good. We did pretty good. We the big highlight I think was beating Okemos for the first time in 33 years.
At 1 point.
At 1 point.
Yeah.
First season they were ever undefeated. Second year in a row for the conference. So it was a nice season. Thank you.
Well, we get a lot of positive comments about your program, and you've done a terrific job with that program over the last few years. So
thank you.
My hat's off to you.
I enjoy it.
You've done a great job.
Can I just say, I mean, I've seen you work with the Hasselblad Marlins as well, which you didn't talk much about, but it's another element of the program, working with community ed, and Bob is there all the time. So, I mean, as aquatics director, I'm not sure people really fully get how much time you are spending over at the pool, and you've just done a terrific job of keeping it all going. And
thank you. But that's kind of what it takes, because most of the program is in the evening, so I end up doing 10 or 12-hour days, many days.
Yeah. I see it.
You attest to, but it's worth it. It's really becoming very nice, and the nice thing this first year is the first year putting all these things in place. Now that they're in place, it's gonna be a little easier to move on and just kind of tweak it as we go along here, and hopefully I won't be here quite as much. Any other questions?
I'd just like to comment that when we first decided to go for the bond issue for the pool, this is what we envisioned, was to have the community involvement and be able to bring our community, including senior citizens and people without children in school, in to utilize it. And I'm glad to see that that's being done. And it was too late for my kids, but my daughter tried to do diving where they were going to East Lansing to practice.
That was tough.
Couldn't do any home meets, and it was just very
That's hard.
difficult. But I'm just thrilled to see that our community is being able to utilize it, and I'm glad you're doing that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bob, can I ask a question? Are you seeing these kids from the Blue Marlins? Are they going on to the high school team? I mean, is it a transition?
We've got a few kids that are up there. I work with the girls a little bit as a volunteer, and then of course I do the boys. The girls seem to have more, as Rob can attest to as well. For some reason, more girls seem to be more into the club program than the guys are. We've got a few, like 7th and 8th graders. I usually only get 1 or 2 a year that maybe were in the club level with the Marlins or possibly Cast. The girls tend to get maybe 3 or 4. I think we've got about 4 or 5 7th and 8th graders this year on the team, maybe a little more with the girls. So for some reason, but we do. They're coming through. I know right now we've got a number of girls who are from Hazlet as well who are swimming for Cast who are outstanding. That will be there too. So we're kind of in a nice position. Cast is a little bit more competitive, more USS oriented, and so some certain kids get to that level, they tend to gyrate to that club. We're more developmental, have a little bit different philosophy, but at the same token we do enough meets so they know what swimming is kind of all about. So I guess these kids can progress at their own pace that way. So and our club is growing a little bit. You know, this is our slow season, and I think this year we're about 5 more kids higher than we were last spring. This tends to be the slowest part of the whole year for us, and we've got the roster this morning had 12 mini Marlins and 19 regular Marlins, so you know we've got close to 35 kids, and that's pretty good.
What's the mini Marlin age group?
That tends to be the real young ones, kind of a transition between swim lessons and competitive swimming.
Okay.
And they only come twice a week for an hour. It's kind of like glorified swim lessons wrapped around the context of competitive swimming. So that's the first step, I guess. So it's doing well.
Good. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Bob.
Very good.
Next, Bart Wajanki, the principal at the high school, is here tonight to talk to us about the proposed changes to the graduation requirements policy in the student handbook. Bart?
Here, give me a second.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here tonight to propose a meat testing and graduation requirement to be adopted for our student handbooks K-12 for the next school year. Specifically, and you can read, I think you have in front of you what the requirement or the policy would read, but specifically that all students K-12 would be expected to participate in MEEP, state or federal testing, and specifically putting forth best effort. Also at the high school, what we found by going through and analyzing the data is that we have about 23 students roughly in the 3 to 4 range in terms of the MEEP test, which under state and federal guidelines would not mean that they are proficient with the MEEP and need to show some improvement. If you break that down even more and layer it, you'll find that roughly about half of those 23 students, quite honestly, are students that typically, if you look at their grade point averages and then you look at how they performed on the MEEP, you can see there's a direct correlation between the amount of effort that they've given. And so what we're looking at, obviously, in that situation and with the expectations of no child left behind and adequate yearly progress is that we expect when students come to test in that situation that they would put forth best effort. However, keeping in mind that there is another half of those students that are out there that quite honestly, for one reason or another, their skill sets are low enough that they don't perform very well on that state standardized test. And so what we're recommending is that after taking this test during their junior year, if they are not proficient with the MEP, then what we would do, either myself or the counselors or an assistant principal would meet with the student and their parents and look at if there was special education or special needs child, look at their IEPC. If they're a student that has a 504 plan, really look at that 504 plan. But certainly if it's a regular ed student, look at their 4-year EDP and take a look at what they've taken to this point, and look at, okay, now what is it going to look like in their senior year? And maybe what we need to do, if they're not proficient in the English area, is to encourage them to take another English class. If they're not performing well in the math, look at the first couple years of math, and if we see there's really a deficiency area, ask them, maybe encourage them, work with them to maybe go back and take a geometry class that maybe they received a D or D minus in. We also have other alternatives at the high school in terms of the math, accounting, things like that. But really the bottom line is, and I guess the goal behind all this, is to really look at our students. Not only right now, there's new kind of a shift of paradigm. It's called Reforming High Schools. And I just went to a conference here a couple weeks ago with Mr. Ferguson. And what we've heard is that education is no longer K-12, but it really needs to be looked at as in terms of K-14. And if you're going to look at it in terms of K-14, then you really need to break it down. We need to look at how those second and third and fourth graders are performing. And if they're not meeting certain benchmarks and standards and expectations, then we need to right then be able to go back and look at their school sets in ways that we can encourage them to do better. Maybe change programming if necessary. It's the same way at the high school end. You know, if we look at it, when it comes to be junior, and what we're putting into place, quite honestly, at the 9th and 10th grade level, is in the core subject areas, is these common assessment or benchmark assessments. So we can take a look at early on where the gaps are for our students, so that when they get to be juniors and they take this MEP, they're going to be more successful. But even that, having said that, there's still no guarantees that they're going to perform well. And if they don't perform well and they've given best effort, we're going to meet with them individually and encourage them, restructure their programs for, by the time they graduate and look at life after high school, that freshman, sophomore year, that they're going to be more successful. I think it's also interesting to add here, and I just read it today, I don't know if any of you saw the USA Today or not, but in the USA Today it talked about specifically more and more colleges and universities are spending a lot of the resources and time on remedial classes for incoming freshmen. About 20 to 21% of those students have to take some type of remedial classes. And so we really have a responsibility, K-12, and from where I sit, 9-12, to really make sure that our students are being successful. And I think by putting this in place, I think it will encourage students to do their best. And if they don't do their best, then we can, as the administrator, the staff, the team, take a look at where we need to encourage them to do better.
Comments or questions?
Yeah, Bart, we had this, I think, conversation in the winter over at Ralia. I think that's what started all of this. So certainly, I think that night that we were there, we were all certainly in favor of the thought of this put forth best effort. I guess my concern is what you just said regarding the half of those 20-some students that maybe their GPA indicated that that's probably what their score was. And so it gets a little tougher to, I would guess it would get a little tougher to determine whether or not they actually did put forth their best effort, since their GPA is low enough to maybe generate that, and they had a bad day that day when they were being tested, or didn't eat breakfast well, or got nervous. But then I hear you say you're going to meet with the student, the parent, and then try and get them to encourage them to take classes in which they haven't been successful in the past. That sounds to me like a very tough sell. I mean, if I was a student, 12th grade, and I was D- in geometry and didn't like algebra at all, and now I have my principal sitting in front of my parents saying, you need to take another math class because you got a 4, boy, that's kind of tough, isn't it?
Right. Well, it may be. You know, part of being a high school principal is being a salesperson.
Yeah.
So I
That's
think
right. Tough sell. That's what I said.
right.
Yeah.
And you know, and we've already begun some conversations. I had a conversation with our math department chair here about a week ago, looking at maybe redesigning some of the way that our math classes are taught, specifically for these kids that are skill deficient. I know in talking with him back 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was a skills, math skills class specifically for students that didn't perform well in district testing. So, you know, we may go backwards in a sense to do some of those things, but I think the bottom line is, and I hope that parents and our community would understand, that it really doesn't do us any good if kids don't perform well on a standardized test or perform well overall in a math area. Math is one of those universal skills that they're going to use throughout their lives. And just because they don't perform well in geometry doesn't mean then that they can't do some basic things and pass some basic skills. And I think that is where we would go with the parent in terms of the sales pitch, is to say, look, we don't expect them to be math majors or professors of math later on in life, but we do expect them to be able to balance a checkbook. And maybe one of the classes that we look at designing that allows us to give math credit is a personal finance class.
Plus,
and
it's
so,
gonna be a lot cheaper than the remedial math class in college.
absolutely.
I mean, that's a good sales, as a parent, I
There
would
you
have
go.
appreciated that.
And just to Bev, I mean, some of the students that we're talking about that are gonna be the low performers are really the ones that won't go on to college. They're the ones that are maybe looking at the workforce and the job force and need some basic skills to maybe work at the mall or work on in a construction firm or something like that. So both ends of it, you're right.
So not only does this come in front of us, we will then, some of us, see later, class reorganization. Is that correct? I mean, you anticipate that happening?
I do anticipate us having some real true dialogue about what we're offering and what that would look like in terms of the senior year for certain students.
And then would you not open yourself up for criticism by the fact that you're designing classes to take a test? I mean, that seems to me that you're gonna get editorial type comments that saying, by gosh, all they're doing is teaching to the test. I mean, the staff is gonna be suspect of that, I would think.
And one of the benefits you have right now is to go back and look at that individual student and find out exactly where those deficiencies are at by looking at the specific test. I mean, you can go back and look at a specific area on those MEP tests right now and determine whether it's computation's a problem or wherever it's at. I mean, you still have that ability to do that, I must say.
Absolutely.
So,
Don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing, I'm trying to just open up the discussion or whatever.
I definitely
and say,
think we need to be careful.
That could be, you gotta be careful, there
Sure.
could be a criticism.
I mean, sure, I mean, lowering the rigor, I mean, I think you have to be careful.
Right?
But certainly, I think we owe it to our students, all of our students, to take a look at possibly some alternative program to make them successful. And
Right.
if that means designing another program to do that, then maybe we do that. If it's looking at how how Algebra 1 is delivered, I think we look at our delivery in Algebra 1. And I think at the same time, we do that for geometry, which are our options right now for our students at the high school, really. I'd agree with you. I think we need to be careful, but I think it's something that we'll look at and definitely proceed with caution, Scott.
Okay.
Thanks.
And Scott, I would look at it just a little bit differently. If you can, the pros and cons of standardized testing, and there's a lot on both sides. But the pro of standardized testing is that you can then measure the abilities that the students have at any given point in time and take a look at those deficiencies. And if we can take a look at those deficiencies and say that we can help this student, we can help a group of students become more proficient in this particular area, whether it's math or it's writing skills, we are preparing them for life. And basically at the high school level, that's what we're trying to do. And so if we have that opportunity to take a look at our coursework and mold it in a certain way based upon the facts that we've learned from these standardized tests to help our students to be better prepared for college or better prepared to go into the workforce, then really that's our job. And so I guess my counter argument, which I agree with you, there will be those that will say we're teaching to the test, but I would just turn the coin, look at the opposite side and say we're using the test and the results of those tests to design courses to make sure our students will be successful once they leave Hassan High School.
And I expect a lot of us woke up Saturday morning and opened up the newspaper and looked carefully at how we did. And not just because we're on the board, but I think everybody in the community does the same thing I did before I was on the board. I want to know how we're doing relative to the competition. And I know we're not in competition, but the MEP scores give us a measurement of how we're doing as a school. And I think this gets directly at one problem, and that is that apparently it has become prevalent, maybe not terribly prevalent, but you listed 23 students who could do better and simply choose not to. They drop out, they do whatever, because the test to them is meaningless. But the test isn't meaningless to us, to the school. Now, so, I mean, part of the question is, how do you get them to take the test? And I shouldn't say it's meaningless, but the perception is it's meaningless, or it's
Not worth enough.
it's mean to make them go through it again or something. And I mean, I believe, I like this a lot, and I did from the first time you talked about it, because it's not good enough for somebody to just simply say, I'm going to answer C on every question, because it doesn't mean anything to me. It means something to the school system. It means something to everybody who picked up their newspaper and looked to see how we rank, and who's thinking about buying a house as a result of that. That's what it means. And, you know, so I mean, I like this resolution. It holds our feet to the fire, and we need to do that.
Thanks. Any other questions?
I'd just like to comment, I like the idea of identifying the students who maybe do need additional classes and bringing that to their parents' attention and, you know, trying to do something to help them out before they leave high school.
Because you're doing it prior to their junior year, right? You're giving them an opportunity to get this thing somewhat corrected and pass the test. I mean, that's what we want. We want that to happen prior to anything else that they would move on to. I mean, that's what you're offering here, right? Either
Absolutely.
during or prior to their junior year of high school?
And also, we also on the other side, in the 9th and 10th grade areas, again, with the final exams and those final assessments, we're going to be looking at that data and breaking it down within our departments and seeing at where our gaps are. It might be, it's a teacher gap, where the teacher, you know, for one reason or another, how we mapped out the curriculum, we completely left out chapters 8 and 11. And so when we go back and we take a look at it, why these kids don't get these certain skills, we can go back and say, well, this is the reason why there was a gap there. And like Mike said, I mean, a part of it is we do get some nice printouts from the state that specifically say where the gaps are for our students. So we know that, and then we can take those, match it up with what we're doing, so we'll have less kids, quite honestly, that we would hope that would put forth a lack of effort or would give best effort when they go to take the exam, because we're going to be working with them 9th and 10th grade year to put them in a position. And a part of it is confidence when they go in there. But as you said, Rob, I mean, a part of it is they come in there and just do nothing. I mean, they come in and sit, and that's what we want to try to eliminate.
I'd just like to comment that next year we'll be giving MEP tests in grades 3 through 8, reading and math. And so it really will give us an opportunity as a school district to look at not only classes of students and how they do, but specific students. So even prior to entering the high school, a student who has been in Haslett Public Schools from 3rd grade on will have a little history. And so that should help the high school staff as they prepare students to take the MEP in 11th grade. It should help us with an identification sooner instead of later.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bart.
Thanks.
Next, because of changes in the revised school code, the constituent school districts in the ISD now have to vote on their general fund budget, and Steve's going to give us some information in terms of what we need to do.
Everybody get a copy of the budget? I have asked officers if you don't have it. Essentially now, as Mike stated, the state is now requiring that local districts adopt a resolution in support or disapproval of their ISD's budget. And so what we have to do by June 1st is essentially review the ISD budget and give a recommendation whether we're going to approve it or disapprove it. This is the first year that we have had to do this in the past. We haven't had to do it in the past, so it's the first year that we had to go through this process. My understanding is this was presented to the superintendents back at the end of April. It's also been presented to
School
our
Officers Association.
School Officers Association. We're actually going to get the formal presentation as business officials this week from Helen McNamara, their finance director. But an initial review of the budget, and Rob can comment on some of the, and Mike on what was presented prior to that, but it appears that the budget all is intact, and everything that has been presented appears to be on the up and up, and so it would be my recommendation that we go ahead and approve this particular resolution to approve the budget.
Rob, do you want to make any comments?
Well, I guess I did hear the presentation at the School Officers Association meeting, and you know, it wouldn't be fun to be an ISD superintendent these days. They took a 10% cut in budget 2 years ago and another one last year. They have laid off 13 people at the Ingham ISD. I mean, I think they're running a lean organization. This is a $500,000 red budget proposed. We asked several questions about that, and I can just say that I'm satisfied that the answer was they're running a really lean organization at this point, and that it probably would cut some meat if they were to cut any deeper to run a black budget for this year. So, and frankly, I think it looks a little better next year if they can get through this year. I wouldn't expect, you know, they're going to spend $500,000 out of reserves basically, and I wouldn't expect them to propose that again.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Now, let's talk about this for a second before we leave this and move on. If we have actually the choice of two resolutions, one to support the budget and one resolution not to support the budget in our action items. It would be my proposal to accept a motion to support the budget.
I would make that motion.
Support.
All those in favor of putting the support resolution in our action items, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So when we get to action items, we are going to be looking at the resolution for support of the budget.
Okay, we didn't vote for support of that just now.
No, we just said that,
Action
we
items.
put it on as the
Which of the
action
two
item.
we're
The
gonna
choice, our choice will be for
Okay.
support.
You're going to have a voice. Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd have to pull it and decide which one we were going to do.
I understand. Okay, I guess I understand. Okay.
Okay, board reports. In addition, because of the changes in the school code, now this is a little more convoluted. Now, yes, more convoluted than the last one.
Yes, it is.
We now will be voting, the boards, individual school boards will be voting for members of the ISD school board. We do not have the information available on the candidates at this point in time. We will receive that information as early as tomorrow, but by the end of the week, if I understand correctly. And there's 3 seats. So we are going to have to hold a meeting. We'll have to decide on a date to have a meeting between now and the 1st of June, because we do not have a meeting before the 1st of June, to decide who we want to support as for the intermediate school board. We also are going to vote on a resolution tonight for our designee, but not directly, because we're going to have to re-vote again. This is just a consideration of who that designee would be and an alternate. So it's really, we will do that again at the next board meeting that we will decide on again tonight. Now, that's why it's so convoluted, and I didn't do a very good job of explaining it.
A little bit tough.
Oh,
But
I
we're gonna
don't
have to
know,
have
it
another
ranked
meeting.
right up there with the
You did as
refunding
well
of.
as- Your explanation was as good as
And the difference between the 11
Clear as
and
mud.
You're
No,
This
you
is
did,
clear.
you did good,
Before you ask
Mike.
us to vote, you're gonna tell us what we're voting for.
Yes,
It
and
is.
so, and let me take it a little further. Since we have to have a designee, and Rob, I will propose that Rob has been our, and I've talked with him this evening, has been our representative on the ISO, and is willing to be our delegate, that we put Rob's name in that position. I would volunteer to be the alternate, but I'm only doing that for, the
For a
purpose of.
short time.
For a short time. And if anyone else would like to be the alternate, I'd be more than happy just to sit back.
We'll get one of the new kids to do that.
I vote aye. Oh, we haven't voted yet.
No.
Oh, wait a second, we're not ready yet.
We have not voted yet.
It's
So,
not so bad.
I got two people out there, I gotta get one.
so this
let's have a
person has to go to the meeting, the Ingham Intermediate
On
meeting, is
June,
that
and
what
that
we're
meeting
talking
is
about?
on June 6th. And be our representative.
Because see, in the past, we've always had a representative, but they never really had to go to the meetings.
Correct. And now they do.
Really?
That gets a little more
There's
complicated.
a
Nobody
lot of
told you about that last year, huh, Rob?
It'd be the good old days.
There were several where we abstained. So, we didn't know anybody.
Okay.
Now
So is
I
that
think
clear,
over
or as clear as
nobody
mud
knows
in
anything.
terms of what we're going to vote on? So when we get down to the action items,
So we're voting to make Rob our designee
Delegate.
and you are, backup.
back up. to the
But then we're
resolution.
still gonna have
But
to
it's a
pick a date
consider-
for
it's
a special
consider-
meeting.
Yes, we still have to pick a date for a special meeting. And it's a resolution to consider designation, not make the designation.
We do that at the
We'll
next,
do that at the next meeting.
at the same time we
So
figure
what-
out who we're gonna vote
So
for.
we have some time to think about you two.
That way, if somebody in the public would like
We'll let the
to
campaigning begin.
volunteer.
Gee, I'll toss and turn in the evening
Okay.
on that one.
And so now, let's move on to the next part of this, which is we need to pick a date, which we will meet as a board between the 16th of this month and the 1st of June for this special meeting to
That
decide
should
what
be
we're going to do.
interesting.
Now, since this is going to be a very short meeting, hopefully, unless something arises that we have to address, this will be the only item on the agenda. We could do it on a Monday evening at 7 o'clock. We could do it at 8 o'clock in the morning. We could do it at 7 o'clock in the morning. We just, whenever we can get the board together to do this. And so, what would be the preference of the board?
Can I ask you a question about, why not May 25th would be a regular rotation. Is there a reason we're not having a meeting?
May 23rd,
Third.
I'm sorry, that's the Monday?
Monday of Memorial.
Monday, well, it's not
No,
Memorial
it's not.
Day, but
We just never have.
Traditionally, we haven't had.
Okay, that's.
No good
yeah,
reason.
Yeah,
We could.
there's one meeting in May, has been,
by tradition.
apparently so.
As there's one meeting
This is
in
my
December.
first
By
round,
tradition.
so.
Ask Scott, he's the one that's been on the board the longest, maybe
That's
he
right.
knows
We
why
just-
we
we've
only
always
did that.
Would that be a logical time to do
Because it's
it?
around
23rd?
We could-
Memorial Day.
well, if the
It's a
23rd
busy
was-
season anyway.
The problem is, we could do it on the 23rd at 7 o'clock, which would be
It's in the window, it's Monday night.
It's a Monday night, it's normal, but because it's not in our regular schedule, people may have already made alternate plans or have alternate commitments, not to be able to
Okay.
make it. So that's why we need to make sure that
2
we
weeks from today.
are comfortable with the date and time.
I'm
Or you
okay
could
with
do it
that.
tomorrow.
23rd's fine with me. Unless you guys wanted to do it some other time.
This is,
I'm fine with the
7 o'clock.
I'm fine with it. I don't care.
23rd, 7 o'clock, very short, very quick,
Fine with me.
unless
That's what you
something.
wanna do, yeah.
Okay,
you-
then
you look like
we
you're
can
taking it.
post it as 7 o'clock on the 23rd.
We could do this at Krispy Kreme.
We're also getting down to the end of the year, and we need to do Mike's official evaluation for the year. We did an interim evaluation. We asked Mike at the beginning of the year to put together some goals, and then he gave us a report on those goals, and we presented comments at the time of his interim evaluation. We need to do the official evaluation before the end of the school year, before the end of June. So what we're going to do is on the, it's the 13th of June? 13th of June, our meeting on the 13th of June, we'll go into executive session, and we will do the review of Mr. Duda for his official evaluation for the year. Since this is the official evaluation, I would ask every board member to come with some written comments. And what Mike is going to do is on the 6th of June, on or before the 6th of June, Mike will again present each board member with a report on his progress, on his goals, and any other statements he would like to make in terms of what he's been doing this year and his accomplishments. So you'll receive that on or before the 6th. We will go into executive session on the 13th. I would also ask you to come prepared with, to give Mike an area or a goal that, for him to consider for the next school year, that you would see as something that you would like him or the district to take a look at as a goal. To help Mike, give Mike some direction in terms of where the board would like to see him move forward within the next year and the district move forward within the next year. Then, in our final meeting in June, I will make public comments in terms of what transpired with this evaluation in closed session. Does that make sense, and does anybody have any questions or comments?
So we have a week then, from the time that he gives us the stuff to the
Yeah.
time we,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine.
Is that fine? Okay. Finance and facilities did meet, and Scott, Rob, do you want to just?
I would yield to Mr. McIntyre if he.
Well, we've pretty much discussed everything we did. We obviously had a presentation by the, Mr. Barch, was it, I think is his name? The guy from our funding thing, and gave us the information that, the sheet that they handed to everybody here tonight. So we had a sort of a preview of that. And we had the opportunity to ask some questions, and that's where, Rob's question basically came out of, because when we got to the Thrun part, the legal part, there was a different number there that wasn't on the Barch sheet, so that threw up the flag, and that's where the numbers come. But as I said, we did meet, and we probably, although I guess we never really said that we agreed with it, but I think that the three of us that met there certainly were nodding our heads in approval of recommending it for the board, and which we will be recommending for our vote, I think, here, our final, well, I guess we final vote that one, or are we voting again here?
We did that.
Did we?
We did it.
We don't have another vote on that then, as far as, okay.
No.
The roll call did it. The roll call did it,
We
okay.
did that so they could leave.
Yeah, and then Steve came forward and talked to us briefly there
ISD budget.
about the ISD budget, and went over it, and which we all had in our packets, I think, a week ago, to review, and basically, he had reviewed it as well and recommended that we accept it as it is, since he saw nothing out of the ordinary there. So he had gone over it as a finance guy and recommended that we do it. So those are our two topics of our committee meeting.
Thanks. And policy and personnel.
We have not met.
Okay. Any comments from the board? Items that they'd like to share? Then we will move on to action items. Now, going through the action items, the bond sale approval refunding was action item number 6, which we already accomplished. Roll call vote, correct? So, action items are 1, approval of minutes from the April 25th regular board meeting. Number, the personnel recommendation is for Andrea Rumsey as the new assistant principal at the middle school. I'm going from page to page here. Number 3 is the ISD proposed general fund budget. Number 4 is the approval of the 2005-2006 School of Choice resolution. Number 5 is building and sinking fund transfer. Number 6 we've already accomplished. Number 7 is the resolution to consider designation of electoral representatives to the June 6th ISD biennial election. And we've discussed that. Rob and I will be the names that will be put on that resolution. And number 8 is approval of out-of-state field trip for the middle school for their annual trip to Cedar Point. And I would accept the motion.
Who gets, just before, rather than pull it, who gets to go to the middle school trip? I didn't.
This is 8th graders.
Is it all 8th graders, or is there an attendance ticket?
I think that they've got some attendance tied to it now, as
It's
well as some.
$50.
My sense is it's attendance and as well as behavior.
Because it indicates here, a celebration accumulating in 3 years of attendance at the middle school. So that any student that has gone to the middle school for 3 years is invited?
Any student that has attended Hazlet Middle School could be, they came in their 8th grade year, is eligible to attend, providing, I think, that their attendance is.
So it's basically everybody.
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 Anybody that's an 8th grader at Hazlet Middle School. that has good attendance and is a good citizen.
Well, I've worded kind of.
Yeah,
okay.
it is, you're right. It almost makes it sound like they needed to be there a certain amount of days or something to
Well, there was a
qualify.
qualifier, and it
Uh-huh.
appears that the qualifier is being in the 8th grade. Right?
You can't go.
I can't go. Gee.
When I was there, I know it was real tough to be able to go to that trip, so. It was,
Okay, I was just wondering if we were
I
doing
think
it
all
for
8th
some
graders
other-
are eligible to attend.
Some other reason, it's just an 8th grade reward.
Yes, it is. It's a culmination of their
Okay.
middle school
Best
years.
Then I suggest we
Best
pull it,
effort.
we'll just.
We don't, okay. Then I would accept a motion to approve the action.
So
items
moved.
stated. Any support?
Support?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And now, moving on to announcements. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting will now be on the 23rd of May at 7 o'clock here in the boardroom. And I guess that's it. As far as announcements, I would take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Okay, everybody got their calendars?
Yes.
Let's choose a date for dinner.
Yeah.
We've also got to do something for next